Hello, welcome to the Energy Question with David Blackmon. I'm your host, David Blackmon, and our special guest today is Krishna Sapkota, Enverus Intelligence Senior Associate. Hi, Krishna. How are you today?
I'm doing great, David, and thank you so much for having me here. Really excited to share maybe next half an hour or so with you here in your podcast session today.
Yeah, you've published a really interesting study that we're going to talk about today here recently that I think has some major implications with the natural gas situation in Europe. And but before we get into that, I wanted you to just take a minute and describe for our viewers what your role is, what you do at Enverus on a daily basis.
No, absolutely. So I work as a senior associate, as you were telling, particularly on the gas macro team, covering US and Canada's supply demand fundamentals, North American short-term, long-term LNG demand forecast, and also the European natural gas market outlook, and also helping clients to identify the market opportunities. So that's the overall areas I cover into. If that answers your questions.
Great. This study, this report you put out here recently about the situation in Europe. Obviously, the continent there is facing what is just a really the most momentous energy crisis, I think, in this century, really in modern times, and seems to grow worse every day. And of course, one of the big drivers is the situation around natural gas, which they use, like the United States. In Europe, they use natural gas pretty extensively for power generation. Talk about the current situation with natural gas in Europe right now.
No, absolutely. As for Europe, this is, I think, one of the most extreme energy crises that we have ever seen in the history of Europe. And if you look the winter prices, particularly natural gas price in Europe, it has surged more than 500% than what we have seen last year's, and that is almost like 8 or 9 times than the natural gas price in what we have seen in US. So with so much of tight European markets right now, we have seen that price from record high of $100 per MMBTU last month to almost like $60 or somewhere in that range recently, and that's almost like $45 swing just from last month to this month. So the market has been extremely volatile, and this volatile market not only started this year; it started from previous year in 2021 when we have seen that European markets continuously undersupplied, particularly during the summertime. If you look, the peak deficit of almost 460, 470 BCF relative to 5 years average. And that's a big deficit that triggered the Dutch benchmark natural gas price almost like $37 in early October of 2021. And now this year, if you look, there was two major supply disruptions that happened in the month of June. One from Freeport explosion that took almost like 2 BCF per day of supply out of the market, and other from the Russian supply, cutting that flows down.
Right.
And as so far, Russia has reduced almost like 60% of their flows, and dropping that share from almost 43% last year summer to almost like 16% so far this month. So we have seen that lot of disruption happening, and that is leading a very tight supply market in the Europe right now. And even the market is pretty much fear of that complete supply disruption of Russian gas, particularly in coming winter when that heating load is needed. And we believe that market has already partly priced in that risk premium due to this tight supply market going on in the European right now.
Yeah, and that risk premium, and it's also isn't part of the reason why the price is so high too, is that because the gas flows in the pipelines from Russia have been severely diminished here since the war began. They're a lot more reliant on LNG imports from the United States and other countries, right? And that isn't that really part two of what's driving the higher prices there in Europe?
No, absolutely right. Because if you look, like Russian gas price is Russian gas is the cheapest price right now. When that they have to replace that gas supply, particularly from the global market, LNG import, which is usually tentatively the expensive gas prices, and they have to, like, it has completely changed that structural in the supply side, and they have to keep on relying more into that LNG import. And that's the reason, definitely we have seen that, why that price is high right now in the
Yeah.
market.
Yeah. Well, the big, of course, tagline on the study release was that there's a possibility that your findings indicate there's a possibility that late in the winter, Europe, or at least parts of Europe, could actually run completely out of natural gas and storage, right? And so I just wanted you to talk a little bit about how that scenario, if it happens, would come about.
No, absolutely. I know we published one report, I think, 2 weeks back, and where we were trying to dig the severity of the European markets, particularly coming winter, if that complete supply disruption of Russian gas happened.
Yeah.
And with European countries, right, agreeing to hit that target of 15% demand rationing, with that being into plan, our scenarios suggest that if the continent experience average winter temperatures, there will be the stock will be sufficient to keep the gas flowing, particularly in coming winter. However, if the winter temperature peak the demand more than 15% higher than 5 years average, and that's where we see the challenge. Even like Northwest storage inventory would run out of gas by the end of March 2023. And so Europe must scramble through normal winter to tackle that complete supply disruption of Russian gas, at least next year winter. And even like if the winter temperature peak the demand 10% higher than 5 years average, they would have some kind of buffer volume in their inventory, that would be critically low, than what we have seen in the historical stock level.
Yeah. So reducing demand, overall demand for natural gas across an entire continent by 15% just seems like a really aggressive target, right? I mean, I don't think we would be able to do that here in the United States. I just wonder how likely, in your view and in the company's view, is Europe to be able to meet such an aggressive goal? I realize they're in a crisis, but even in a crisis, that's a big reduction in natural gas use.
Totally, I agree on that. And I think that's a debate of questions, because at this point of time, what feel is, the demand rationing plan will likely to be unequal. And we have already seen that happening. If you look in the month of August, I think the residential commercial demand was down 12% compared to 5 years average, and industrial demand destruction was already at full swing starting, I think, in the beginning of this year. And last month, I think it was around 21% down compared to 5 years average.
Wow.
But now, if you look on the gas demand in the power sector, we have not seen that sign of any slowdown in that sector due to lingering heat waves, low nuclear productions, low hydro productions. So that's we have not seen that yet in the gas demand in the power sectors. So we have seen that unequal allocation into different sector. But now the question is whether that overall consumption will decrease by 15% or not, right? And I think it depends a lot on the political decisions, either to prioritize maybe industrial demand over consumers, or maybe electricity demand over heating. How that will play out coming into this winter, I think that is something we need to watch.
Yeah. And of course, getting so much of the demand reduction from demand destruction in the industrial sectors, like, isn't that really kind of the least desirable source of the reduction? Because, I mean, if you're having destruction in your industrial sector, that means your economy is really slowing down pretty dramatically, right?
100%. No,
Yeah.
totally. I think that's the last way, definite last option. But now, if you look on the supply side, like what alternatives they have, right? That's the something we need to watch on. And if you look on particularly on the supply side, it's a very limited potential to increase that supply, to tackle this winter.
Right.
So either, if you look like how they are doing so far is the incremental LNG demand import, which they are already boosting by 70% up than what we have seen in last years. And that's the way only they have replaced that supply disruption so far from Russia. But now if any further cut from Russian supply, now either I think it has to come with it with by demand rationing, or maybe the cut in storage injections. That could be possibility. But now, demand rationing, like how much of that demand rationing will be there. It depends also on the how much of the Europe will be able to keep that LNG import this coming winter. That will decide how much will be the burden on that demand rationing coming winter, and which is
Yeah.
something definitely we have to watch how it will play out.
On the subject of supply cuts by Russia, we hear all this news about Nord Stream 1 and Nord Stream 2, but I mean, really, Russia supplies natural gas into Europe on a series of different pipelines, right? There's one big one that goes through Ukraine, even, correct?
That's right. That's right. Yeah,
Yeah.
if you look the Russian supply, they have like I think three corridor. One goes to the northwest regions, one goes to the central regions, and other to the southern side.
Yeah.
So now, if you look on the northwest side, that's the flows that has been dropped to zero now, which usually go through Nord Stream pipelines. But now, if you look on the central side, they are still flowing. I think almost like 3 BCF per day of supply, and also in the southern side, they have not dropped any volume there. But I think if you look on the central side, they have definitely reduced from over a period of time, but still there is some volume going through that regions.
Okay. So the big threat really on supply is to northeastern Europe, then, right? I mean, I think you specified that in the study that you put out, right?
Exactly. It's
Yeah.
because if you look Europe, almost like 60-65% of the demand comes from Northwest Europe,
Yeah. Yeah.
and
I mean,
that's
northwest.
where
Yeah.
a lot of demand is, and we want to watch particularly that regions. And I think the report mostly when we talk about that storage inventory that focus on that region.
Okay. So before we go any further, I want to pause for a minute for a word from our sponsors at Enverus. The energy industry faces challenges every day, and events of the last 2 years have caused disruptions like never before. Companies in the energy industry need actionable intelligence and a single source of truth that brings all the data together. Enverus is the energy specialized technology partner that provides intelligent connections for the global energy ecosystem. Only Enverus has the analysis, people, experience, and industry scope to connect the right data and information in the right way to discover missed opportunities and deliver fast outcomes. Find out more at Enverus.com. That's Enverus.com. Okay, we're back with our special guest, Krishna Sapkota with Enverus. And we really appreciate Enverus' sponsorship. Krishna, I know that, you're just one of hundreds and hundreds of people who work at Enverus, and it's really such an honor, really, for my show to be sponsored by your company. So I really appreciate it. Before we go further with the details of the study, I think it's important for folks to understand how studies like this are conducted. Can you take just a few minutes and describe the methodology that you employ in a study like this?
No, absolutely. So if you look, this study is particularly the outcome of the storage balance based on complete, supply demand fundamentals, particularly conducted in that Northwest Europe. And we come up with a couple of assumptions as well, particularly on the supply side. If you look, we have keep that supply pretty much flat, except the LNG import, which we have already seen that 70% boost, and we
Yeah.
believe that that boost will likely to happen this coming winter as well. But other supply we have pretty much kept flat, like for example UK production, Netherlands, and also with the Norway, the import volumes, we have to keep that pretty much flat this coming winter relative to last year's. And now if you look, the amount of risks there is like how the Asian winter will play out. That will decide how much competition there will be in the LNG demand, and whether Europe will be able to keep that high LNG import or not. Or, that is something to watch. In coming winter.
Yeah.
And on the demand side, if you look, our assumption in that is 15% demand rationing, as government has planned. But if countries fail to maintain that demand rationing, that will add more demand into the market than what we have in our model. So we have some couple of assumptions that we have play out in the model to come up with those storage balance.
So we talk about, we need to hope that Europe has a normal winter, right, temperature-wise, to avoid this really disastrous scenario. But I wonder, of course, in the United States, we have the NOAA, NOAA, that makes these long-term projections about what the temperatures might be over the winter months ahead. I know they have the same kinds of agencies in Europe, and I'm wondering what are the current forecasts that are coming from these, experts about what the winter might look like in Europe.
Yeah, I think the when we come to weather forecast, it's always a tough questions to answer when it goes beyond 15%. I mean, 15 days forecast.
Right.
Uh,
Yeah.
but now, if you look, historically, in last 5 years, 2017 winter was, I think, the temperature was peak the demand almost a higher, or slightly higher than 15% compared to 5 years average, and even 2021 was 6% higher in terms of demand compared to 5 years average. And I was looking some of the preliminary estimates on the weather forecast, and I saw that most of them they are predicting mostly around slightly cooler winter this year and normal winter this next year's. Even I was checking NOAA, that the weather predictions, and they have said around 91% La Nina winter at least this year.
Yeah.
And La Nina is something that usually bring a colder winter in Europe, but also depend upon how that strength will play out. And next year they are predicting around 54% chance of La Nina. So overall, I think the preliminary estimates from consensus is mostly the slightly cooler winter this year and slightly maybe normal winter next year's.
Well, I guess slightly cooler might be okay, but gosh, we sure don't want to have an extreme cold winter there. So we have we had this big spike in natural gas prices in early to midsummer, but they've kind of cooled off late summer and into September. What are the dynamics going on there that have caused that recent price reduction?
Absolutely, and we have seen definitely, that record high price from $100 to almost like 55, $60 right now.
Yeah.
And the softening of the prices, I think, combination of both supply and demand story. And if you look on particularly on the supply side, storage inventory is at much healthier position than it was anticipated. And I think the European inventory storage right now they stands at almost 87%. Sorry, 87%, and that is almost like you're beating that 80% target by 2 months ahead of plan.
Yeah.
And the pace of injection has been super strong, and if that same pace of injection is maintained for next couple of months, we believe that storage inventory would end more than 90% by the end of October, which means a lot of buffer volume available to tackle that winter cold than what it was anticipated before. So that's one of the reasons why we have seen that softening in the price. But also, if you look in terms of policies, European government policies to speed up the approval process for regasification unit and even also lowering that fee tariff to support those projects. And we have seen that momentum of floating storage regasification unit in Europe. A lot of countries like Germany, Netherlands, even Italy, Greece, they are planning to add some floating regasification unit by at least by the end of this year, which means that it will likely to add some more additional LNG import, on the top of what they have already in the supply,
Right.
which is also supporting some kind of bearish sentiment. But also, if you look on the Norway supply, I think it's a maintenance season, and right now they are almost like 1 BCF per day of supply down, to leading to almost like 10 BCF right now. But there was a lot of speculation that that maintenance will shut down a lot of volumes, which we have not seen that yet. And I think that is also one reason why that softening of the price is there. But now, if you look on the demand side, government plan for 15% demand rationing starting from last month, and we have already seen that happening. In residential commercial demand down by 12%. The industrial demand destruction was already at full swing. And we believe that some of the new policies government is planning to add that will further reduce the gas demand in the power sector, which we have not seen that yet. And that will also support some, softening of the price, what we have seen in the market right now.
Yeah. So on the LNG side, of course, that's been a big project for Europe here this year is trying to source LNG imports to replace what they're losing from the pipelines coming in from Russia. And a lot of that has been coming from the United States, as you said earlier. Does the United States still have additional capacity to send even more LNG to Europe? Are we running pretty much at our peak right now.
Absolutely. No, I think yeah, you're right because the U.S. LNG export is running at pretty much maximum capacity.
Okay.
Even like there is a Calcasieu Pass that came into service, and that definitely include a little bit of incremental supply, but definitely not a lot to replace
Yeah.
those Russian supply disruption. And we believe that I think starting from 2025, a lot of LNG new projects are coming online in and that will add more. LNG export capacity to US, and we are predicting almost like 30 BCF of per day of LNG supply from US by the end of 2027. That's our predictions, and which is almost like additional 10 BCF or even more in from that 2024 to 2027 timeframe. And I think that's where we will see more additional supply to Europe, and will help definitely to loosen some, or maybe have some kind of the tightness what they have seen in the market right now. It will support some kind of additional supply to at least offset some of the tightness what they are going through right now,
Yeah.
mostly probably after 2024.
So I guess just one question that just occurs to me in listening to all this isn't all this LNG export and the pressure on the United States industry to export more, that's also having an impact on our domestic prices, right? Isn't that part of the reason why domestic natural gas prices in the U.S. have risen pretty substantially this year as well?
Now, I think there are a couple of reasons to support that fundamental. Definitely, right now, if you look the market in US, the summer was pretty much hot.
Yeah.
Their demand was pretty much high. Even that Freeport explosions happened, they have some kind of additional supply, but the weather was pretty much hot. Even higher than that Freeport supply disruption what we have seen there.
Yeah.
But now, not only in terms of if you look not only in terms of demand side, but if you look on the storage side, U.S. market was pretty much undersupplied since last year, and that has bring that storage deficit almost like 300 or even 400 relative to 5 years average. And that's deficit in the storage inventory. That's also one of the reasons why we have seen that higher prices.
Yeah.
But on the top of that, there is also inelasticity in demand. The coal inventory is pretty much low in the market right now, and then a lot of natural gas demand is there out there because of that inelasticity in the demand. And I think that's also one of the reasons why we have seen that volatility in the US market. I think there was a price almost like $9 right now. They are
Right.
almost sub seven, and that continue. I think that will continue to happen until that storage inventory normalize. And most probably next year we might see a little bit of down in price once production start to show up and hit that takeaway capacity. But right now, I think that's the overall fundamental why we are seeing that price around $7 or so.
Well, this has been very informative, Krishna. I really appreciate you coming on the show with us, and hope we can have you back in the future with after the next study that you guys put out. I mean, this was really very fascinating, and I think our takeaway from today's show is pray for a normal winter in Europe, right?
Absolutely, absolutely, yeah. Because that's I think that's what we think. The normal winter can help Russia. I mean Europe to tackle that complete supply disruption of Russian gas. And even if it is something to watch, I know they are still Russia is still flowing around 3 BCF of supply,
Yeah.
particularly Central Europe, and there's also a risk that whether that supply will be there or not. But normal weather is the one that will definitely help to tackle Europe at this point of time. That's what we have seen.
Well, thank you so much. And that is all for our show for today. Really appreciate you folks watching, and we'll see you next time.